People walk around as if time is just this thing we can toss around, waste casually, and somehow still have enough of. We act like we've been given an unlimited supply, as if we can burn through today because tomorrow is guaranteed. But here's the cold truth. Time doesn't care about your plans, your goals, or your potential. It keeps moving, whether you do something with it or not. And if you're not intentional about what you're doing with your hours, your days, your years, then you are wasting your life. Slowly, silently, without even noticing it. Think about it. Most people don't even recognize that their life is slipping through their fingers until they're already drowning in regret. You wake up one day and suddenly you're not 25 anymore. You're not 30, you're 40, and the dreams that once lit your soul on fire. They're dusty, shelved behind a wall of excuses, fear, and wasted evenings scrolling on a screen. It's not dramatic. It's not some tragic cinematic moment. It's quiet, it's subtle, and that's what makes it dangerous. We've gotten really good at numbing ourselves with distractions, things that feel like they're keeping us busy, but in reality, they're just filling up the silence where your real life should be. Social media, endless entertainment, gossip, cheap dopamine, these things aren't neutral. They're not harmless. They're stealing time from you, time you'll never get back. And it's not just about wasting time. It's about what you're not doing with that time. The books you're not reading, the goals you're not chasing, the people you're not loving deeply, the battles you're not facing, the work you're not doing, that's the real cost. Now, some people hear this and get defensive. They'll say, well, I deserve to relax, or not everything has to be productive. And sure, rest is necessary, but there's a huge difference between rest and escape. Rest refuels you. Escape sedates you, and a life built on sedation is just a slow march toward regret. That's not living, that's drifting. That's spiritual laziness disguised as self-care. And if you're being honest with yourself, you know when you're doing it. You can feel it, that dull ache that tells you you're meant for more, but you're too comfortable, too scared, or too distracted to move. And this idea that you'll start later, that's one of the most dangerous lies you can believe. There is no later. Later is where dreams go to die. Later is the graveyard of potential. Every second you delay action is a second you donate to nothingness. You think you have time, but people die every day wishing they had done more with theirs. Don't be one of them. What would happen if you actually treated time as sacred, not just as something to manage with planners and schedules, but something holy, something you don't just fill, but honor? How would you show up differently in your life if you truly knew, that every moment matters? That this moment matters? You'd stop wasting it on nonsense. You'd stop handing it over to people who don't care, to activities that don't matter, to patterns that lead you nowhere. You'd stop letting your life bleed out in the background while you pretend you're fine. You want meaning. You want fulfillment. You want purpose. Then start by respecting time. Wake up to the fact that this right now is your one shot. Not in theory, not as some motivational cliche, but in a deeply personal, uncomfortably real way. Your one life. That's what's on the line, and you're not entitled to another hour of it. People wait until something shakes them. A diagnosis, a death, a disaster, to finally wake up. Why wait until it hurts to get honest? Why wait for pain to teach you what clarity could have revealed years ago? Stop wasting your time. Stop pretending tomorrow is promised. Stop acting like life is a rehearsal. It's not, this is it. Your clock is ticking, whether you're watching it or not. And so, the question you have to ask yourself is brutally simple. Are you using your time in a way that honors your life? Or are you just letting it pass? Because if you're not intentional about your time, then someone else will be. And they'll use it for their agenda, not yours. Make no mistake, you either master time or time masters you. And when it's gone, it's gone. So don't wait. We are experts, absolute masters at making excuses. It's like a built-in reflex. You feel a little pressure to move forward, to start something meaningful, to confront something difficult, and what do? You reach for the excuse, it's too late, I'm too tired, I'll do it when I feel ready, when I have more time. When life slows down, when I feel motivated, but that's all nonsense. You know it, you feel it deep down. Those excuses don't protect you, they trap you. They wrap you in comfort while robbing you of transformation. And the tragedy is that they feel so reasonable. That's what makes them dangerous. They don't scream, they whisper. You've been working hard, you deserve a break. There's no rush. You're just not in the right headspace today. But what you're really doing without saying it out loud is choosing comfort over meaning. You're choosing stagnation over struggle. You're choosing to stay small because the idea of expanding terrifies you. It's not that you don't have the time. You do. It's not that you lack the ability. You don't. The truth is, you're scared of what will happen if you really try because deep down you know what's possible. And the moment you give up your excuses, you no longer have anything left to blame. That's terrifying for most people, because excuses let you keep your story, the story that says you would have changed your life, if only the conditions were better, if only the timing made sense, if only you felt ready. But that story is a lie. Waiting to feel ready is a trap. Readiness doesn't come before action, it comes after. You build readiness through movement, through effort, through risk. You build confidence not by thinking, but by doing. But if you keep sitting around waiting for the stars to align, you'll still be waiting when your time runs out. You need to understand this. Every time you make an excuse, you trade growth for safety. And growth and safety are rarely found in the same place. So you have to choose. Are you going to be someone who protects their comfort, or someone who pursues their potential? Because you don't get both. You say you're tired, then rest and get up anyway. You say you're confused. Then take a step in any direction and adjust. You say you don't know where to start anywhere. You say you're overwhelmed. Break it down. But stop thinking that these feelings are valid reasons to do nothing. They're just feelings, they're signals, not commands. You think discipline means always feeling inspired. It doesn't. It means acting in alignment with your values, even when it sucks, even when you're bored, even when no one claps for you, even when it's slow, especially then, because that's where your life is forged, in the unseen moments of quiet repetition, not the highlight reels. You need to decide what kind of person you want to be, the one who explains why things didn't happen, or the one who made them happen despite everything. No one's coming to push you. No one's coming to take the excuses away. No one's going to drag you forward. That's your job, and if you don't step into that responsibility, you will live your entire life beneath your potential. You will look back years from now and realize you built a life on avoidance, not action, on fear, not courage, on excuses, not decisions. You might not be responsible for everything that's happened to you, but you are responsible for what you do next. You are responsible for what you build with what you've been given. That's the brutal, freeing truth. Excuses feel good in the short term, but in the long run they are chains, they are dead weight. They are the voice of a life unlived. So cut the excuses, cut them at the root, replace them with decisions, with movement, with clarity. Because you're not here to drift. You're not here to wait around for someone to give you permission. You're here to step into something real, something difficult, something worth the pain, something worth the time you have left. And it starts the moment you stop lying to yourself. Most people go through life never really defining what matters to them. Not consciously, not deliberately. They move through their days reacting to things, chasing what they think they're supposed to want. Money, status, approval, attention, because that's what everyone else seems to be doing. And so they adopt values they never examined, pursue goals they never chose, and live lives that feel hollow, confusing, and restless. Because when you don't define what matters to you, the world will do it for you, and the world doesn't care about your soul. It cares about keeping you busy, distracted, and compliant. So you wake up and you follow the same routines, chase the same validation, numb yourself in the same ways. But underneath it all, something feels off, something feels missing. You're successful by someone else's definition, but miserable by your own. That tension, that quiet ache that creeps in when the noise dies down, is the cost of living without alignment. Because when your actions don't match your values, your life starts to fracture. You start to feel like you're playing a role in someone else's story. You feel fake, you feel empty, and deep down you know something's wrong. You just can't put your finger on it. That's what happens when you don't define your values. You become a leaf in the wind, blowing whichever way the current trend or popular opinion pushes you. You start to chase surface-level pleasures because you haven't done the deep work of figuring out what you stand for. And so your time, your energy, your attention, your entire life gets spent on things that don't bring meaning. You start living a life full of motion but void of direction, busy but lost, surrounded by people, but disconnected from yourself. And the scary thing is that this can last for years, sometimes a lifetime. People grow old having never really lived from the core of who they are. They become experts at fitting in, at performing, at doing what's expected, but strangers to themselves. Because they were never taught to ask the hard questions. What do I believe in? What do I actually want? What am I willing to suffer for? What kind of person am I trying to become? If you want to stop wasting your life, you need to stop outsourcing those questions. You need to take ownership of your values, not the ones handed to you by your parents, your culture, or your social media feed, the ones that you choose. And the only way to do that is to slow down, be honest, and look inward. That's not comfortable. That's not easy. But it's necessary because clarity is power. When you know what matters, you can finally start to cut through the noise. You can say no to the things that waste your time. You can stop chasing things that leave you empty. You can finally build a life that means something. That kind of clarity doesn't just help you. It anchors you. It keeps you grounded when life gets chaotic, when people try to pull you in a dozen directions, when fear tries to paralyze you. If you don't know your values, every opportunity becomes a trap. Every failure feels like a crisis. Every opinion feels like a judgment. But when you're clear on what matters, you can endure discomfort. You can walk away from shallow rewards. You can take the hard path not because it's easy, but because it's right. Because it aligns with something deeper than the moment. But make no mistake, this requires courage. Because when you define your values, you also define what you're willing to lose. You risk being misunderstood. You risk being alone. You risk walking away from the crowd. But that's the price of living a life with integrity. That's the cost of choosing meaning over mediocrity. And if you're not willing to pay that price, then you'll spend your life faking it, smiling for the camera while dying on the inside. So stop waiting for clarity to find you. It won't. You have to earn it. You have to wrestle with yourself. You have to get brutally honest about what you believe, what you want, and what you're here for. And then you have to align your actions with that truth, day in and day out. Even when it's inconvenient, especially then, because the moment you define what matters is the moment you stop living on autopilot. It's the moment you start building a life that feels like your own. One of the most subtle and dangerous ways people waste their lives is through distraction. Not the big, obvious kind, not the life-altering, catastrophic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that looks harmless, the kind that slips in through your pocket, lights up your screen, feeds you constant noise and novelty. You think you're relaxing, unwinding, catching up. But what you're really doing is sedating yourself. You're replacing depth with dopamine. You're numbing your life, moment by moment, through habits that cost you nothing short of your soul. Distraction is the enemy that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't confront you with a crisis. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers. It makes you comfortable. It makes you feel like everything's fine. Like there's no urgency. No need to act, it says, just 5 more minutes. You've had a long day. You deserve this. And in those moments, you believe it? You believe it because it's easier than facing the weight of your potential. It's easier than admitting you're afraid of the work. Afraid of the silence. Afraid of what would happen if you really tried. So you scroll, you binge, you gossip, you dabble. You surround yourself with stimulation not because you're full, but because you're empty. Because if you were to sit still, without a screen, without a distraction, without a stream of input, you might actually feel the weight of your unfulfilled responsibility. You might have to face the truth that you're not doing what you know you should be doing, that you're wasting your time, that you're drifting, that you're hiding. People say they're too busy, but they're not. They're too distracted. They're too scattered. They're spending hours a day consuming content they won't remember tomorrow, hours avoiding the discomfort of discipline, hours running from their own conscience. And then they say they don't have time to read, to write, to train, to build, to love deeply, to think clearly. But it's not that they don't have time. It's that they've lost their focus, and the cost of that is enormous. Because a distracted life is not a full life. It's a thin one, a fragmented one. You lose your sense of meaning. You lose your sense of direction. You start living in reaction instead of creation. You start becoming the sum of other people's opinions, other people's agendas, other people's algorithms. You lose yourself piece by piece, not because something went wrong, but because you never stopped long enough to notice that nothing was going right. And it's not just about technology. It's not about phones or screens. It's about patterns. It's about what you're using to avoid being fully alive. Maybe it's busyness, maybe it's drama, maybe it's pointless conversations, maybe it's always being needed by someone else so you don't have to face your own neglected potential. But whatever it is, you have to see it for what it is. An escape. A quiet rejection of responsibility. A slow self-betrayal. Because real life, the kind that changes you, fulfills you, expands you, isn't found in distraction. It's found in attention, in presence, in effort, in silence, in commitment, and all of that requires sacrifice. It requires you to put down the quick hit of pleasure and pick up the long road of purpose. It requires you to say no to the easy escape and yes to the harder truth. It requires you to feel uncomfortable, restless, even bored at times, because on the other side of that discomfort is where your growth lies. You don't find yourself by checking out. You find yourself by waking up, by showing up, by confronting what you've been avoiding. You reclaim your time by setting boundaries. You reclaim your mind by seeking stillness. You reclaim your life by choosing substance over stimulation. You don't need more entertainment. You don't need more information. You need more intentionality. You need to remember what you were made for. And if you're honest, you already know where your distractions are. You already know where you've been giving your time away for nothing. You already know what's dulling your edge, draining your energy, killing your spirit slowly. So stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending this is harmless. It's not. It's keeping you small. It's keeping you numb. It's keeping you from the life that is waiting for you. If you would just pay attention. Because every moment spent distracted is a moment lost, and you don't get those moments back. There comes a point where you have to stop blaming your past, your circumstances, your parents, your environment, your mood, your genetics, whatever it is, and realize that you are responsible for the direction of your life. It doesn't matter where you started. It doesn't matter how unfair things have been. It doesn't matter what cards you were dealt, because none of that changes the fact that the steering wheel is in your hands now. And if your life is off course, the only one who can turn it around is you. We love the idea that something external will save us. A breakthrough, a relationship, a mentor, a lucky break, a clearer head, but waiting for those things to come is just another form of hiding. It's handing over the wheel and sitting in the back seat, hoping the road takes you somewhere better. But the truth is, no one's going to come and fix it for you. No one's coming to rearrange your life and hand you a new one. If you don't decide to take control, you stay exactly where you are. And the reason this is hard to accept is because responsibility is heavy. It's not a feel-good idea. It doesn't make excuses for you. It doesn't let you off the hook. It stares you in the face and says, if your life is a mess, it's your job to clean it up. If you're lost, it's your job to find your way. If you're broken, it's your job to rebuild. And that's not cruel, that's empowering, because if it's up to you, then you don't have to wait, you don't have to beg. You don't have to hope someone else changes. You can start fixing things now. You can start steering differently now. But you have to decide that being the victim of your own story is no longer acceptable, that it's not enough to complain about how things are. You want to actually change how they are. That means confronting your patterns. That means making sacrifices. That means doing what's hard instead of what's comfortable. That means growing up emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and not in some abstract, theoretical way, but in how you act, how you speak, how you structure your days. It's easy to say, well, I had a tough childhood, or I never had the right role models, and maybe that's true. But at some point, you're the adult now. You can't keep waiting for someone else to parent you. You can't keep blaming your pain for your passivity. Pain isn't an excuse to stay stuck. If anything, it's a reason to move forward, to transform, to do something meaningful with what hurt you. And that doesn't happen by accident. That happens when you stop being passive and start becoming deliberate. You have to understand how powerful your daily choices are. They might feel small. What time you wake up, how you speak to others, what you eat, what you consume, what you tolerate, but they're not. Those little choices stack up and build your future. They build your character. They build your life. And every time you choose to avoid responsibility, you reinforce a habit of weakness. Every time you choose to show up, even imperfectly, you reinforce strength. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they refuse to take full ownership. They make everything someone else's fault. Their unhappiness, their stagnation, their bitterness. It's always someone else's doing. And as long as that's the story they live by, they stay powerless, because if it's someone else's fault, then you need someone else to fix it. But if it's your responsibility, then the solution lives within you. You are not a passive observer of your life. You are the architect. You're designing it with every decision, every habit, every response. And if you don't like what you're building, you can start over. Not all at once, not perfectly, but you can start. You can become the kind of person who doesn't flinch from responsibility, but embraces it. Because that's what freedom actually looks like. It's not the absence of rules. It's the presence of direction. It's not living without pressure, it's rising to meet it. And the beauty of taking responsibility is that no matter how far off track you've gone, you can turn the wheel. Right now, not when you feel ready, not when you have it all figured out, not when the conditions are perfect. Right now, the second you stop blaming and start building. That's the second your life begins to cha. Most people live their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They organize their decisions around what's easy, what feels safe, what doesn't sting too much. They tell themselves they're being smart, that they're protecting their peace, that they're avoiding unnecessary stress. But what they're really doing is avoiding growth. Because the uncomfortable things, the things you'd rather avoid, are usually the very things that would make you stronger if you faced them. You grow when you do hard things. There's no other way. There's no shortcut. No version of yourself that becomes disciplined, confident, resilient, or powerful by always choosing what's convenient. It's the resistance that makes you. It's the struggle that forges character. And the longer you delay engaging with the hard things, the longer you stay soft, fragile, reactive, and lost. You stay stuck in a loop where nothing gets better because you refuse to pay the price of progress. Comfort is seductive. It whispers to you that you're fine just the way you are, that you don't need to change, that you've earned the right to relax. And sometimes you do need to rest, but don't confuse rest with retreat. Don't confuse avoidance with peace. Some of the most damaging habits come disguised as self-care, and the danger with comfort is that it feels good while it's slowly draining your potential. It feels soothing while underneath your spirit is shrinking. You want to build a better life, then start by confronting the things you fear. Start by doing the thing you've been putting off, the conversation, the habit, the risk, because courage is not something you wait to feel. Courage is what shows up when you act in the face of fear. You don't need to feel ready. You need to be willing. Willing to be uncomfortable, willing to sweat, willing to be embarrassed, willing to be bad at something before you get good. If you look at the people who are living lives of meaning, who carry themselves with weight and presence, who have built something worthwhile, they've all done hard things. Not once, over and over again. They've faced things they didn't want to face. They've pushed through pain. They've endured rejection. They've taken losses. They've bled for what they believed in. And that's why they walk with clarity and power, because they've earned it. But the culture you're living in doesn't encourage that. It encourages ease. It wants everything fast, frictionless, instantly rewarding. It tells you that if something is hard, something must be wrong, that pain is always a problem, that difficulty is a sign to quit, that you should always feel motivated, and if you don't, maybe this path just isn't for you. That's nonsense. You can't build anything that matters without effort, without repetition, without pushing through resistance. That's the price, and the irony is, the longer you avoid hard things, the harder your life becomes. The more you avoid discipline, the more chaos creeps in. The more you avoid responsibility, the more regret builds up. The more you avoid discomfort, the more fragile you become. So now, even small problems feel overwhelming because you never develop the strength to carry heavier ones. You don't become resilient by being protected. You become resilient by going through things and not breaking. Stop waiting for life to get easier. It won't, but you can get stronger. You can get sharper. You can become someone who's not afraid of difficulty, who doesn't run from resistance, who steps toward the challenge, not because it's fun, but because it's necessary. Because growth demands it, because your future demands it. The life you want isn't hiding in comfort. It's hiding behind the hard things, and you'll never feel fully alive until you face them. Because deep down, you know you're capable of more. You know there's a stronger version of you buried under layers of fear, laziness, hesitation, and distraction. But you don't uncover that version by thinking about it. You uncover it by earning it, by proving to yourself day after day that you're willing to pay the price. Do the hard things not because you have to, but because you were built to. One of the most paralyzing traps a person can fall into is the constant pursuit of approval. The endless craving to be liked, to be accepted, to be praised, to be validated. And it's subtle because it doesn't always show up in obvious ways. It can look like being agreeable. It can look like chasing achievements. It can look like dressing a certain way, speaking a certain way, living a certain way. Not because it's who you are, but because it's what you think people want. And that's the tragedy. You begin trading your authenticity for acceptance. You begin shaping your life around external validation. And before you know it, you don't even know who you are anymore. When you live for approval, you become a slave to other people's opinions. Every decision becomes filtered through the question, will they like this? Will they understand? Will they think I'm enough? And so you hesitate. You edit yourself. You hold back the truth. You silence your instincts. You smooth the edges of your personality so you can fit more comfortably into the mold that's been handed to you. But in doing so, you give up the very thing that makes your life yours. You give up your voice, your individuality, your honesty, your conviction. You can't live a meaningful life if your actions are constantly dictated by what will win you applause. The crowd is fickle, their praise is fleeting, and if you're always looking over your shoulder to see who's nodding in approval, you'll never move forward with real strength. You'll always be reactive, always second, guessing, always adjusting your path not based on truth but based on popularity. And that's where so many people get stuck. They've built an identity not on values, not on purpose, but on perception. And that identity becomes fragile. It's not rooted in anything solid. So the moment someone criticizes them, or misunderstands them, or rejects them, they crumble. Because their self-worth was never anchored internally. It was always borrowed, and when something is borrowed, it can be taken away. You have to stop living for the applause. You have to stop measuring your life by how it looks to other people. Because most people don't even know what they're clapping for. They don't know your story. They don't know your battles. They don't know your purpose, so why would you give them the power to define your direction? Living with integrity means being willing to disappoint others. It means being okay with not being understood. It means doing the right thing, even when it's unpopular. Even when it's inconvenient. Because the only way to build a life of substance is to build it on your own terms. Not in rebellion, not in arrogance, but in truth. And truth doesn't always win you fans. Sometimes it gets you excluded. Sometimes it gets you laughed at. Sometimes it costs you relationships, but it gives you something much greater, a life that's real. You can't be free if you're always adjusting yourself to make other people comfortable. You can't be strong if you're always shrinking to avoid judgment. You can't build anything meaningful if you're constantly diluting your voice to make it more palatable. At some point, you have to decide what matters more, being liked or being whole. You can't have both. Because the price of authenticity is often rejection, but the price of approval is betrayal, and only one of those paths leads to fulfillment. It takes courage to stop performing, to stop asking for permission, to stop looking outward for your worth. It takes courage to be disliked for the right reasons, to be misunderstood for the truth, to be rejected for standing firm. But that courage is what sets people apart. That's where real power lies, not in being agreeable, but in being real. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when no one is clapping? Who are you when there's nothing to gain and everything to lose? That's the version of you that matters. That's the foundation you build from. And if you've lost touch with that part of yourself, it's time to go back and reclaim it. Not for anyone else's approval, but because your life is too valuable to live in someone else's image. Because the moment you stop living for approval is the moment you start living for truth. There's a kind of life that most people fall into, a life that revolves around comfort, around feeling good, around avoiding friction, pain, uncertainty, and it's not obvious at first. It seems harmless. It even feels responsible. You tell yourself, I deserve rest, or I've earned this break, or things are fine the way they are, and there's truth in that. You do need rest. You do need recovery, but there's a line, and once you cross it, what you're calling self-care becomes self-deception. You're not just resting anymore. You're hiding. You're not just recharging. You're retreating from responsibility. And the deeper you settle into comfort, the more your edge disappears, your drive fades, your ambition dulls. You stop challenging yourself, and everything becomes about ease. The easy decision, the easy distraction, the easy routine. And while your life may look peaceful on the surface, underneath it's hollow, because you're not moving. You're not growing. You're not stretching yourself beyond who you were yesterday. You've settled into a version of life that feels good but leads nowhere. And it's a slow erosion. You don't notice it all at once. It happens gradually. One skipped commitment, one avoided challenge, one missed opportunity at a time. You trade the pursuit of growth for short-term pleasure. You stop chasing the person you're capable of becoming because the process is hard and comfort is easy. And every time you make that trade, you get a little further from the life you were meant to live. Now here's the paradox: comfort can make you miserable. Because you're not designed to stay in one place. You're not built for stillness. You're wired for progress, for evolution, for meaning. And meaning doesn't live in comfort zones. Meaning lives in the places that test you, that call you to more, that demand effort, discipline, and sacrifice, the moments that make you dig deeper than you thought possible. Those are the ones that build you. You want to know why you feel empty even though things look fine. That's why you've stopped investing in your own evolution. You've made comfort the goal instead of the tool. And when that happens, you lose the very thing that gives life depth. You lose struggle. And without struggle, you lose significance. Because if nothing's at stake, then nothing really matters. You can tell a lot about a person by what they're willing to suffer for, what they're willing to get uncomfortable for. That's the line that separates those who drift from those who build. One chooses comfort as the prize. The other chooses purpose and accepts the cost. And that cost isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. It's the daily decision to train when you don't feel like it, to speak up when it would be easier to stay quiet, to say no to things that waste your time, to keep showing up when no one's watching. You can't outsource this. You can't wait to feel inspired. You can't keep hoping that motivation will just hit you one day. It doesn't work like that. The only way out is through the friction, through the boredom, through the days that feel flat and uninspired. Because that's what separates amateurs from professionals. The amateur needs to feel good to act. The professional acts regardless of how they feel. And that discipline, that willingness to embrace discomfort, is what ultimately leads to freedom. Freedom isn't lounging around all day. Freedom isn't endless leisure. Freedom is the ability to build the life you want because you've developed the strength to do what needs to be done. You're not at the mercy of your emotions. You're not controlled by impulses. You're not reactive. You're directed. So take a hard look at your habits. Ask yourself honestly, are you growing or are you just staying comfortable? Are you investing in long-term strength or indulging in short-term ease? Are you doing the hard things that matter or avoiding them because they're inconvenient? Because comfort, if left unchecked, becomes a cage, and every day you sit inside it, your world gets smaller, your spirit gets quieter, your potential gets more distant. But the moment you step out of it, the moment you decide that ease is not the goal, that growth is worth the discomfort, that's the moment your life begins to mean something again. Trade comfort for growth. It's the only trade that leads somewhere real. People keep waiting for motivation. They think there's going to be this magical moment when everything aligns, when they feel clear, confident, energized, and ready to take on the world. But that moment rarely comes, and the ones who succeed, the ones who build lives of substance and direction, they don't wait for motivation. They act. They understand that waiting to feel ready is just another form of procrastination, another excuse dressed up to look reasonable. Motivation is unreliable, it's emotional, it comes and goes, it's tied to mood, weather, sleep, stress, distractions, all things you can't fully control. If your plan for building your life depends on motivation, then your progress is going to be inconsistent at best and non-existent at worst. You'll have flashes of effort, followed by long stretches of inaction. You'll feel proud one day and ashamed the next. And over time, you'll start believing you're just someone who can't follow through, when in reality, the problem isn't you, it's your strategy. The solution isn't to try to feel more motivated. It's to stop making motivation a requirement. You don't need to feel like it. You just need to move, because action changes everything. Action generates momentum. Action wakes you up. When you act, even in a small way, you disrupt the loop of hesitation and start to build something real. You start proving to yourself that you're capable, that you can move forward even when the emotional fuel tank is empty. You don't need giant leaps. You don't need to change everything overnight. You need small, consistent movements in the right direction. Get up when you said you would, do the workout you promised yourself, open the book instead of the app. Speak the truth instead of staying silent. None of these things require inspiration. They require a decision. And when you start acting from decision instead of emotion, you take back your power. And yes, it's hard at first, especially when you've built a life around waiting to feel in the mood. But once you push through that initial resistance, something shifts. You start realizing that discipline feels better than indulgence, that clarity feels better than avoidance, that follow-through builds confidence, and you begin to trust yourself, not because of how you feel, but because of how you act. Most people think they need to fix their mindset before they act, but it's often the reverse. Action fixes mindset. You get up and move, and your mind catches up. You step into responsibility, and the fog starts to clear. You face the difficult task, and your internal narrative starts to shift, but you won't get there by thinking about it. You get there by doing. Think about the kind of person you want to become. Strong, grounded, focused, resilient. That version of you isn't built by waiting. It's built through repetition, through doing the things you said you'd do, even when they're inconvenient. Especially then, because that's where self-respect is born, in the quiet, uncelebrated moments when you choose action over apathy. And you won't always see the results right away. That's another trap. You think, if I don't see a change immediately, what's the point? But that's short-sighted. Progress isn't always visible. Sometimes it's internal. It's the rewiring of your nervous system. It's the strengthening of your character. It's the quiet accumulation of self-trust. You don't need fireworks. You need to keep showing up. Eventually, momentum takes over. Eventually, what used to feel like a struggle becomes part of who you are. But you only get there if you start without waiting for the perfect moment, without waiting for motivation to strike, without needing to feel good first. You move first, the feelings come later, so stop romanticizing motivation. Stop treating it like it's supposed to be your compass. It's not. Purpose is your compass. Discipline is your engine. Clarity is your guide. You don't rise by feeling inspired. You rise by moving when it would be easier to stay still. That's how lives are changed, not through bursts of emotion, but through acts of decision repeated over time. Start moving, even if it's just a step. You're not immortal, and the sooner you come to terms with that, the sharper your vision becomes. It's a brutal truth, but a necessary one. You are going to die. It might be in 50 years. It might be in 5. And whether you want to acknowledge it or not, the clock is ticking. Now, that thought can either terrify you into paralysis, or it can shake you awake. Because death isn't just the end. It's a clarifier. It strips away the trivial, the noise, the distractions, and it forces you to ask, what am I really doing with my life? People waste years acting like they'll live forever. They talk about their dreams, their plans, their someday lives, as if time owes them a favor. As if they are guaranteed all the time they think they need, but time doesn't negotiate, it just moves. Quietly, steadily, without pause. And while you're sitting around waiting for ideal circumstances, time is slipping away. Day by day, hour by hour. You don't get a warning bell at the halfway mark. You just wake up one day and realize a decade is gone. That should disturb you, not because it's depressing, but because it's real. And real is the only place from which you can build something worthwhile. Most people don't truly live, they just exist. They run on routines, they repeat the same empty habits. They avoid hard truths and chase easy comforts. They think if they can just stay distracted long enough, they'll avoid the deep ache of meaninglessness. But meaning doesn't come from comfort, it comes from confrontation. It comes from standing face to face with your mortality and deciding, if I'm going to die, then I sure as hell better live. Not half, live, not fake. Live fully, courageously, intentionally. You don't get to do this twice. You don't get to run it back. So the question becomes, how much longer are you going to tolerate your own avoidance? How many more years are you going to give to people, patterns, and paths that don't align with your soul? How many more mornings are you going to wake up with that dull sense of discontent, telling yourself, maybe next year will be different? Next year isn't promised, neither is tomorrow, and that isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to focus you. Because once you grasp that time is finite, every moment becomes heavier with meaning. Every choice carries weight. Every hour is a vote for the kind of life you're building. You stop wasting energy on petty arguments. You stop tolerating fake friends. You stop indulging in habits that numb rather than nourish. You start asking better questions. What legacy am I leaving? What impact am I making? Who am I becoming day by day? There's a reason why so many people feel empty. They're trying to fill a spiritual hole with distractions. But that hole doesn't get filled by more comfort or entertainment. It gets filled by purpose, by responsibility, by sacrifice, and most of all by awareness. Awareness that this life isn't a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is the play. You're on the stage right now, and the audience is your future self watching closely, hoping you choose to wake up. Wake up to the fact that you don't need more time, you need more urgency. Wake up to the fact that regret is louder than fear, that the pain of discipline is nothing compared to the pain of wasted potential. Wake up to the fact that death isn't your enemy, it's your mirror. It's always standing there, reminding you to stop pretending, reminding you that you were made for more than survival. You were made to wrestle with the weight of life, to create, to build, to give, to shape, to transform. So don't wait for a diagnosis. Don't wait for tragedy. Don't wait for the world to collapse around you before you decide to take yourself seriously. Decide now, decide that you won't let this one shot slip away unnoticed. Decide that you'll live in a way that, when your time does come, you'll meet it with peace, not panic. You'll look it in the eye and say, I used it well. Because in the end, you won't be judged by your intentions. You'll be remembered by your actions,